Iran hit an American warship in the Gulf, and what came next made every previous escalation look like a rehearsal. Saturday, 9:22 p.m., Persian Gulf, 67 nautical miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. USS Nitze guided missile destroyer was holding a surveillance position when the IRGCN attack came from two directions simultaneously. From the north, a Noor anti-ship cruise missile fired from a coastal battery at Bandar Abbas. From the east, a second Noor fired from an IRGCN fast attack craft that had been running silent without radar emissions for 40 minutes before the launch. Two missiles, two vectors, designed to split the ship's defensive response between threats arriving from different bearings. The Aegis combat system processed both tracks in under a second and allocated one SM-2 intercept to each inbound weapon. The northern missile was destroyed at 6.4 nautical miles. The eastern missile defeated its SM-2 and entered the Phalanx engagement envelope at 900 meters. The CIWS destroyed the body. The warhead fragmented and fell into the water 14 meters off the starboard bow. The pressure wave from the detonating fragments cracked a weld seam along the hull between the waterline and the keel. Flooding began in the forward auxiliary machinery room at 9:23 p.m., 1 minute after the attack. The damage control team had the flooding partially contained by 9:41 p.m., partially, not controlled. The hull fracture was 22 centimeters long and widening as the ship settled by the bow under the weight of incoming water. The forward auxiliary machinery room was taking on water at a rate that exceeded what 3 portable, submersible pumps could move even at maximum output. The pumps were designed for controlled drainage operations, not for countering active hull flooding in a ship underway. The commanding officer ordered a speed reduction to 6 knots to reduce hydrodynamic pressure on the fracture and initiated a controlled flooding of an adjacent ballast tank to redistribute the ship's trim and reduce the differential pressure across the damaged hull section. The maneuver stabilized the flooding rate at a level the pumps could almost match. Not stop, almost match. USS Nitze was a ship that was going to need a tow in a dry dock. The commanding officer understood this clearly within the first 20 minutes and was already thinking about the tow route and what escort coverage it would require. The question was whether the dry dock would be in Bahrain or whether the flooding would overcome the pumps and the patch teams before the ship reached it. The answer depended on how the next 90 minutes of damage control went and whether the temporary repair measures being improvised in real time by a team working in rising water would hold long enough to get the ship to a pier. 3 sailors had been on the weather deck when the warhead fragments detonated. 1 had been protected by the ship's superstructure and was uninjured. 2 had taken shrapnel. The ship's medical officer assessed the first as treatable aboard. Deep lacerations to the left arm and shoulder, serious but not life-threatening. The second had shrapnel embedded in his chest wall and required surgical intervention that was beyond the ship's medical capability. A medevac helicopter from USS Bataan amphibious assault ship was airborne within 14 minutes of the casualty report being transmitted. The sailor was aboard the helicopter at 9:51 p.m. and in surgery at the Bataan surgical suite at 10:09 p.m. He survived. The commanding officer of USS Nitze had ordered damage control and medical response simultaneously, while also composing the attack report that was already burning up the fleet communications network toward Abraham Lincoln, toward 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and toward the Pentagon duty officer who was going to wake up the Secretary of Defense in the next 8 minutes. What's your call? Type A if the U.S. response should target the specific launch platforms, coastal battery and fast attack craft, and hold there. Type B if this attack justifies a broader strike on Iranian Gulf military infrastructure. Drop your answer below. The attack report reached USS Abraham Lincoln's Combat Information Center at 9:31 p.m. 9 minutes after the missiles fired. The strike group commander had been asleep. Was not asleep by 9:33 p.m. The targeting conference that assembled in the flag spaces at 9:45 p.m. was working against 2 parallel timelines. The first, the tactical timeline of responding to the attack before the firing platforms could relocate, rearm, or return to sanctuary positions inside Iranian territorial waters. The coastal battery at Bandar Abbas was fixed infrastructure. It wasn't going anywhere. The fast attack craft was a different problem. It had been moving northeast at 42 knots since the moment its Noor left the rail. At 42 knots, it would reach Iranian territorial waters in 31 minutes from its launch position. The attack had happened 19 minutes ago. 12 minutes of window remained. The authorization to strike a target inside Iranian territorial waters required a level of political authority that the strike group commander did not possess unilaterally. The 5th Fleet commander in Bahrain was on the secure line. Central Command in Qatar was patched through. The authorization request went up the chain in real time, while the fast attack craft was still outside the 12 nautical mile limit. The authorization came back at 9:54 p.m., 23 minutes after the attack, 8 minutes before the boat would have crossed into sanctuary. An FA-18F from the Lincoln's Combat Air Patrol, already holding a targeting solution on the contact from 18,000 feet, received the weapons-free call at 9:55 p.m. The AGM-84L Harpoon impacted the fast attack craft at 9:57 p.m. The boat was destroyed 4.8 nautical miles outside Iranian territorial waters, with 3 minutes to spare. The coastal battery at Bandar Abbas had nowhere to run and was struck at 10:14 p.m. by 2 JSO glide bombs from a separate FA-18F. Both launch positions were destroyed before the first hour after the attack had closed. The strikes on the fast attack craft and the Bandar Abbas battery were the proportional response to the direct attack. The Lincoln's flagstaff was already building the second phase of the targeting package before the first phase ordnance had impacted. The second phase was not a proportional response to a specific attack. It was a campaign package targeting the infrastructure that had made the attack possible and that would make the next attack possible if it was left intact. The intelligence picture assembled over the previous 6 weeks identified 4 additional coastal battery positions in the Hormuz region capable of firing Noor anti-ship missiles at American surface vessels. 3 IRGCN fast attack boat staging facilities capable of supporting the kind of dual-axis attack that had just damaged USS Nitze. 2 radar networks along the northern Gulf Coast that provided the targeting picture the attack crews depended on for engagement geometry. The second phase package targeted all 9 of these nodes simultaneously. Subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. Every decision in this operation, every system involved, every tactical choice broken down completely, this is what we're built for. The second phase strikes required an authorization level above what the fast attack craft engagement had needed. Not because striking military infrastructure was categorically different, but because the scale of 9 simultaneous targets across 200 miles of Iranian coastline represented a level of military action whose political implications extended beyond the fleet commander's lane. The authorization process ran through the night. 5th Fleet, Central Command, Joint Chiefs. The National Security Council duty officer was looped in at 11:30 p.m. The full authorization came at 1:44 a.m., 4 hours and 22 minutes after the missiles hit USS Nitze. The waiting had been operationally frustrating. It had also allowed the Lincoln's targeting cells to refine the strike package twice, incorporate updated imagery of 3 of the 9 targets, and receive additional signals intelligence that added a 10th target, a communications relay node that had coordinated the dual-axis attack timing, to the package. 10 targets, 18 FA-18F and FA-18E aircraft in the strike package, 12 additional Tomahawk cruise missiles allocated from the destroyer escort screens to cover the 3 targets deepest along the Iranian coast. The strike launched at 2:17 a.m. and was complete at 2:49 a.m., 32 minutes from first weapon employment to last impact. The coastal battery at Jask, 140 miles east of Bandar Abbas, was the furthest target and the last to be struck, 2 Tomahawks arriving 31 seconds apart. All 10 targets were confirmed destroyed or severely damaged on battle damage assessment imagery collected by a Global Hawk UAV that had been orbiting the strike area at 60,000 feet throughout the engagement. The Iranian coastal defense network along the Gulf's northern shore had been reduced from a functional layered capability to a collection of burning facilities in the time it takes a commercial flight to cross the Atlantic. What would you do as the IRGCN operational commander watching 10 facilities go dark on your status board between 2:17 and 2:49 a.m.? Comment your decision and your reasoning below. Iran's response came before dawn, not from the IRGCN maritime forces. Those had just lost their staging and support infrastructure and were effectively neutralized as an offensive capability in the near term. The response came from the IRGC ballistic missile force, which operated on a separate command chain and had been at elevated readiness since the afternoon of the attack, when Iranian intelligence had assessed that an American carrier response was probable. At 3:58 a.m., 14 Fateh 110 ballistic missiles launched from mobile launchers in Fars province and Hormozgan province, targeting NSA Bahrain and the American military logistics hub at Camp Arfjan in Kuwait. The launch signatures were detected by American missile warning satellites within seconds and passed to the THAAD batteries in Bahrain and Kuwait before the missiles had completed their boost phase. The THAAD battery in Bahrain engaged 8 inbound missiles. 7 were intercepted in the mid-course phase. 1 defeated its assigned interceptor and was engaged in terminal phase by a Patriot PSC-3 battery that destroyed it at 4,400 meters altitude. 0 warheads impacted at Bahrain. The Kuwait THAAD battery engaged 6 inbound missiles and destroyed 5. The 6th impacted Camp Arfjan's northern perimeter at 4:09 a.m., detonating in a vehicle staging area. The blast destroyed 4 trucks, damaged a fuel tanker, and killed 2 American soldiers who had been conducting a scheduled maintenance check on vehicles parked in the impact area. 2 more names, 2 more families, 2 more entries in the casualty notification system that was running faster than anyone wanted it to run. The Lincoln's Air Wing launched a second strike package at 5:30 a.m., targeting the mobile ballistic missile launcher complexes identified by the post-launch trajectory analysis. Mobile launchers are a harder targeting problem than fixed infrastructure. They move after launch, and the window to strike them before they complete their post-launch displacement is narrow. The analysis had identified 2 of the 3 launcher deployment areas with high confidence. The third was assessed to medium confidence based on trajectory data. All 3 were struck. The 2 high-confidence sites had launchers still in their post-launch positions when the bombs arrived. The crews had followed standard procedure and begun moving, but had not yet completed their first displacement to covered positions. 4 launcher vehicles were destroyed. 3 were damaged. 2 had completed displacement and were in tunnel complexes that the strike package couldn't reach with available ordnance. The ballistic missile threat had been degraded, not eliminated, degraded. The Gulf at dawn looked different than it had at sunset, not because the geography had changed, because the infrastructure that had defined Iranian offensive capability in the maritime domain for 20 years had been systematically reduced in a single night of operations. The coastal battery network was gone. 5 sites that had each required years to construct, equip, and crew, each representing an investment in the specific capability of threatening American surface vessels transiting the Gulf. The fast attack boat staging facilities were gone, along with the covered storage, pier infrastructure, and maintenance equipment that kept the IRGCN fleet operational between missions. The radar networks that fed the targeting picture were gone. The communications relay that had timed the dual-axis attack was gone. 7 of 14 ballistic missile launchers were destroyed or damaged. The IRGCN fast attack boat force that remained afloat was operating without the shore-based support architecture that their doctrine depended on for fuel, rearming, targeting data, and command coordination. They could still sortie. They could not execute a coordinated multi-axis attack without the communications and targeting infrastructure that had been built specifically to enable coordination across dispersed launch platforms. They were boats that existed. They were not boats that could threaten a carrier strike group in the way the IRGCN doctrine required. The night had not just destroyed facilities. It had destroyed the organizational system that turned individual platform capabilities into a coherent offensive threat. Don't miss the follow-up breakdown covering the diplomatic track and the question of what happens when Iran attempts to rebuild what was destroyed. Subscribe to my channel and hit that bell. USS Nitze arrived at NSA Bahrain under tow at 11:40 a.m., 14 hours and 18 minutes after the attack. The hull fracture had been partially repaired at sea by a damage control team that worked through the night in waist-deep water in the forward auxiliary machinery room, using underwater epoxy compound in temporary patch plates to slow the flooding rate enough to allow the tow. The ship would be in the dry dock for a minimum of 5 months. The commanding officer walked off the ship under his own power when the tow lines were released. The 2 sailors who had been on the weather deck were both alive. One had been treated and returned to limited duty aboard by midnight. One was in post-surgical recovery at the Baton's medical facility and was expected to make a full recovery. The ship had not been lost. The night had not gone the way Iran intended when the 2 Noor missiles left their launchers at 9:22 p.m. The operational assessment that 5th Fleet assembled at 2:11 p.m. was detailed and direct. The dual-axis attack had been a sophisticated and well-planned operation that had nearly sunk an American destroyer. The near miss was a product of the Phalanx system performing above its nominal effectiveness parameters. The CIWS hit the missile at 900 meters, which is the outer edge of its reliable engagement envelope, and the warhead's partial detonation, rather than full detonation, was a function of where in its arming cycle the missile was when the fragments hit it. A slightly different geometry, a slightly longer fragment flight time, would have produced a different outcome. The operational lesson was not that the American defense had been adequate. It was that the American defense had been adequate on this specific night by a margin smaller than anyone in 5th Fleet was comfortable documenting and writing. The Iranian assessment of the night was its own document. An attack that had been planned for weeks using a dual-axis approach specifically designed to overwhelm single-platform air defense had produced a damaged destroyer, 2 wounded sailors, 2 soldiers dead from the ballistic response, and the complete destruction of the maritime strike infrastructure that had taken 2 decades and billions of dollars to build. The exchange was not favorable, would not become favorable on a second attempt without capabilities that the IRGCN no longer possessed after the second phase strikes. The question in Tehran at 2 p.m. was not what the next maritime attack looked like. It was what the next phase of the conflict looked like when the maritime option had been neutralized in a single night. The answer to that question was being written simultaneously in the Ballistic Missile Force briefings, in the Cyber Operations Directorate, and in the Quds Force planning cells that operated outside the conventional military command structure, and whose options were neither constrained by the infrastructure that had just been destroyed, nor limited to the maritime domain that the American strikes had targeted. The Gulf conflict had exploded, as the night's events confirmed. The explosion had not been contained to the Gulf. It had produced a pressure wave that was propagating outward through every Iranian capability domain simultaneously, searching for the response that would impose cost without triggering another night like the one that had just ended. Was the American second phase strike on the coastal network the right call, decisive action that prevented a second attack, or did the scale of 9 simultaneous targets push the conflict to a level that a more calibrated response could have avoided? Type R for right call. Type C for overcalibrated. Make your case below. Conflicts that explode do not explode evenly. They explode at the points where capability meets opportunity, and the calculation about cost and response has been made incorrectly by one side. Iran made that calculation at 9:22 p.m. on a Saturday when 2 Noor missiles left their rails aimed at a destroyer whose crew was about to have the worst night of their careers. The American response remade the calculation by removing the infrastructure that had supported the original one. The next calculation Iran makes will be made without a coastal battery network, without fast attack staging facilities, without the radar architecture that built the targeting picture, and with a ballistic missile launcher fleet that is 7 vehicles smaller than it was before dawn. The calculation will still be made. It will be made from a weaker position with fewer options against a fleet that has now demonstrated twice in a single night what it does when given authorization in a targeting package. That demonstration is part of the response. The part that outlasts the smoke from the burning facilities, the part that lives in the next planning cell meeting in Tehran when someone proposes the next operation and someone else asks what happened to the last one. If this breakdown delivered the analysis you came here for, like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Every engagement, every decision, every system that was tested in a Gulf night, we build it out completely. What does Iran's next move look like without its coastal maritime infrastructure? And which element of the American response do you think was most decisive in shaping the conflict going forward? Drop both answers below.